Hello there, my name is Jason Schmaltz and I'm an AMGA Rock Guide apprentice, and today I'm going to show you how to lower a partner the equivalent of about 2 rope lengths, so 400 feet, and then how to follow them to get off a mountain quickly. The application I'm going to show you today is kind of an emergency evac type application, so a storm is rolling in or somebody's hurt, you need to get off the mountain quickly. So we're going to be setting up a system that you can lower down quickly, but you're going to leave your rope and stuff behind, and you can come back and get that later. There are ways to get your rope off, which I might cover in a separate video, but today I just want to cover, hey, this is how you can get someone the equivalent of about 400 feet down in a matter of minutes in the case that there's an emergency situation. So the first thing that you need is you need 2 ropes. So assuming you have 2 ropes of at least 60 meters in length, you should be able to lower about 400 feet. Of course, if you have 2 70-meter ropes, you'll be able to lower more like 440 feet, I think, almost 450 feet. And the way that you want to join these ropes is with a flat overhand. So you take the ropes together, and then you tie an overhand about a foot or so from the ends, about 30 centimeters from the ends. So come down, around, make a loop, and then bring the tails through. And it's important that I have my knot dressed really well, so you can see there's no crosses on the dressing. And then I pull each one of those strands tight individually. It's really important on the flat overhand to pull each strand individually tight, not to go like this and say, oh, this is good. You have to pull each one tight individually. So once we have our flat overhand, we can now set up for the lower. So ideally, I would get to the end of my first rope and have my climber at this end tied in and start to lower them. So we're not going to flake out 60 meters of rope for this application. I'm just going to show you how to set up the lower and then proceed with that. So I'm going to lower on the gree-gree in guide mode. So I will open the gree-gree. I will place the part of the rope toward the climber where the gree-gree says, and then I'll have my brake that I'll control on the other side. And of course, the knot that I'm going to have to pass that I just made will be upstream of the brake side. I will then go ahead and clip that into my master point. And lock down. So from here, I need to initialize my lower by configuring the brake strand to go back like a Z, and then using a carabiner to hold the rope in that position as I execute my lower. And from there I can lift the lever just like in the gym, and you can see the rope will pass through. Once I get my knot close to my gree-gree, so assume that I've lowered a significant amount of material, I can actually take the rope out of the redirect because I only have about a foot of slack left before my knot, and I want to get the knot pretty close to the gree-gree. Now, it's important to understand that this is already a safe system because I have a knot that can't fit through my gree-gree. So the gree-gree is already basically locked off. And then from here, I need to get ready to transfer my gree-gree out of the system. So in order to prepare for my gree-gree to be taken out of the system, I'm assuming that my climber cannot unweight this gree-gree. But one key step before I do anything involving removing the gree-gree from the system, because right now my climber is safe, is I need to build the system that they're going to be on next. So in this case, I want to lower on a munter after I remove the gree-gree from the system on the other side of the knot. So I'll take a locking carabiner, put it in the master point, and from here I'm going to build a munter mule overhand in this carabiner on the back side of the knot that I'll be able to ultimately transfer the weight onto. So go ahead and put the rope in, and I want to build the munter in the preloaded position. So I make a loop on the strand that I want to be loaded. I can milk that a little bit if I want to. I want to be mindful of this distance. I don't want it to be a really long distance because that'll introduce a significant amount of slack in the system that I'll have to get out later. But I want it to be long enough that I can maneuver the rope in this weight transfer. So I have a pretty good amount right now. So I have my munter, and now I'll set my mule. Okay. And then I'll finish with my overhand. Okay. and then I'll lock that down. So now I have a fail-safe system that I'm going to shift the weight onto from the gree-gree, so I'm essentially backed up. Okay, so this is perfect. From here, I'll work to transfer the weight from the gree-gree onto this munter mule overhand. So from here, I want to go ahead and set up a ratchet, which is basically a munter mule overhand that's grabbing this rope that will allow me to remove the gree-gree from the system. So for this type of application, I like to use a 6mm cordelet because that does a pretty good job at grabbing the rope and also has enough material in it that I don't have to have two components to have a prusik or a friction type hitch here and then a munter mule overhand over here. Okay, so let's tie a climb heist, which is what I'll use. So my climb heist, we'll grab the orange rope. Okay, and that's grabbing. And then I want to go ahead and connect my climb heist to the shelf with a non-locker is fine here because I'm backed up with a locking carabiner system. Oops. So there's my munter. Try to dress that a little bit better. And then I can make my mule. And then because I have this extra tail, I can just pass that through that loop, and that's considered locked off. I don't have to actually do an overhand, okay? Okay, so at this point, I'm ready to lower my rope just enough to shift the weight from the gree-gree onto the ratchet that I just built. And again, I still have my system backed up with the munter mule overhand on the back side of the knot in the rope. And so you can see I've released the gree-gree. And now I can take my gree-gree off the master point. And you can see how much slack I have in the system, roughly about 8 inches or so, maybe a foot, and that's acceptable, okay? And I want to go ahead and shift the weight onto this munter mule overhand. So because I have this extra material on my cordelet, I can simply undo this MMO, lower the system until the weight shifted onto this MMO, and I can pull my cordelet right out. And from here, I can undo this MMO and continue lowering. And from here, I can just lower my climber to the ground. One important thing to note when lowering on a munter, if you have to lower a significant amount, you may want to turn this into a super munter. That will apply a little bit more friction to the system, so make sure that your climber is heavy enough to overcome that friction. But what that enables you to do is to not have twists accumulate in the rope. Another way to prevent this from happening is you could lower on something like an ATC or another gree-gree if you're concerned about twists accumulating over the course of lowering under long distances. Okay, so I'd say, you know, between 50 and 100 feet, if you have to lower more than that on a munter, you may want to consider one of those alternate systems. So now that my partner's on the ground, I can just lower off this fixed line. Remember, we're going to leave this rope. We're going to come back and get it later. So I might as well lower with the gree-gree, which is probably the fastest and I would say probably safest way to lower at this point, especially if we're in an emergency. I don't have to worry about third hands or extended rappels. As I lower and come to my knot, I need to build a system that will help me to transfer on the other side of the knot in the vertical. So I can go ahead again and lower my gree-gree pretty close to this knot, because remember, this is kind of like my backup fail-safe. This knot cannot pass through the gree-gree. Okay, so I can just go hands-free right now because I only have 6 inches of slack that I can travel. And I can go ahead and build a backup system on the downstream side of the knot that I'm going to pass. So I'm just going to do a clove hitch. And I'll attach that to the bottom part of my belay loop. and lock it. It's important to lock it and leave, you know, roughly 5 or 6 feet of slack, just to be able to, you know, maneuver the rope. Okay. And now I need to build my ratchet that's going to allow me to pass this knot. So first thing I need to do is again do my climb heist. And you want to be kind of mindful of the distance that you have this climb heist away from you, because once I pass the knot, if I make it too high, then I'm going to have to build a way to ascend and then descend back in order to retrieve the climb heist. So with the gree-gree, I had the luxury of making this climb heist relatively close to this knot. So I should be able to pass it pretty easily. And then I need to attach this climb heist to myself with an MMO. So again, once I have my munter tied, I want it to be preloaded to the up position. Okay, and then I can milk it to get it tight. And then go ahead and do my mule. And then again, I can pass the tail of the cordelet through. And then move that up so that it's tight. Okay, so from here I can then simply lower onto the climb heist. So I've unweighted. My weight is on the climb heist now, not on the gree-gree. I can take the gree-gree out. Remember, I'm backed up right here on the clove. So the most I can fall right now is roughly 5 feet, okay? Put the gree-gree on the back side of the knot. Reattach the gree-gree. Okay, still have my back up with the clove. I can go ahead and tighten it up now. Nothing wrong with that. So now I have about a foot of slack. Okay. I forgot to lock this climb heist, so that's a marginal, but you definitely want to lock that before you weight it. And now I can pull my strand out of my munter mule. Try to release in the brake position. Lower myself. Oops. Onto the gree-gree. You can see I have just enough stretch to be able to reach my climb heist. If I didn't, again, I would have to build an ascending tool to step up to it, which I would be able to do with a sling or something like that. So from here, I can take my climb heist off. Take my cordelet. Undo my clove. Clean up a little bit. And continue lowering. Hey, I hope you found this video useful for how to lower someone a long distance with 2 ropes, and then how to follow them and pass a knot on the rappel. I'll make a couple of more videos on passing knots, because there's a couple different applications and also ways to do it. This I saw is kind of the most common way, with the gree on hand and being able to get off the mountain quickly. Hey, if you haven't liked or if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys out on the crag.